Today, I feel super awesome and blessed to have Jake Fugman with Axon Group and Jason Wagner with Greystone Realty. I'll let them kind of touch base on who they are a little bit, just kind of your background, what you're doing with your business, and then we can get to know you guys a little bit better. Let you go first.
That's an awesome start, honestly. So alignment is a big thing that I talk about with my coach. It's not easy, but I do have a coach that I talk to on a weekly basis, and that is one of the things that is when you are in alignment with your goals, your results come a lot faster. And that just was a conversation probably 2 weeks ago for me, so I'm really glad that you brought it up. But my name is Jason Wagner. I'm the managing broker of Wagner Group. And first, I want to tell you just about my personal life real quick. I'm a girl dad. I have 2 girls, a 3-year-old named Scarlett and a 1-year-old named Layla. I'm married to my college sweetheart, Rachel. We live in Jefferson Park. And the reason, I mean, just the way you kick this off is awesome because I wanted to say that I bring up my family first because they're my why, they're my motivator. And anybody in this room, ask yourself what you why. Why are you wanting to be an investor? Why are you wanting to be in real estate? Why do you want to be full time? There's typically a motivator, and my biggest why is always in family. So I wanted to share that with you guys, just so you know, like a little beside me, I'm a big family man. But then also my real estate career, just being a managing broker of Greystone Realty. We're only a year and a half old. We have 7 agents right now, hopefully 2 more in a few weeks. And what makes us unique is that each one of our agents is actually an investor first, a real estate agent second. So basically, it's a prerequisite to getting a license with us that you have to own an investment property or have the mindset to convince me that you are an investor or you want to be an investor. And why is that important? In my opinion, there are 15,000 real estate agents here in the city of Chicago. There should not be because the best ones are honestly the ones that are out there doing it themselves and they're investing on the side that really know what they're doing. So those types of people can offer you so much more advice than somebody who's just not open the door for you on Zillow. That's one thing to talk about design, right? Somebody that's out there actually doing it themselves can offer you so much more tangible advice. And that's why I want people to come to my brokerage that I think have that investment experience or want to be able to do that. But then also from the other side of it, it's from the agent experience. There's another stat that's out there: 87% of real estate agents don't make it past 5 years in business. Why is that? 87%. That's a massive number. So basically, you get in, and 4 years later, you're not in real estate. It's because it's so hard to establish a sales business, right? And you're always going after that next student, you're always trying to find that next client, that commission, right? Maybe you elevate the lifestyle because the market was good, especially in the last 2 years, about agents that just made a lot of money but not really doing much. Those agents that aren't investing those dollars into the real estate portfolio and starting to build a cash flow, I think that's where you can really excel and actually have a sustainable career in real estate. So again, what we're building here at Greystone Realty is that we want our agents to be doing deals amongst themselves, and we encourage that amongst our agents. And we do deals with one another, but then also having a hands-on experience of being a deal person and talking to fellow clients that are coming to the portfolio or jump into it for the first time. That's our whole mission.
Oh,
That's hard to follow up.
Well, my name is Jake Fugman. As Jonathan mentioned, well, first of all, I thank Jonathan and A&M for having us here. It's a great gathering. It's my first time. We've already met a few awesome people. See a few familiar faces, but most people I haven't met yet, which I think is super important, right? Networking is how I grow my business. Everything's very organic, but I'll say the word about myself. So I'm an investor and an agent myself. I'd like to kind of say I'm a broker first, but investing got me into the business. I lead a group of 20 agents in and around Chicago. We do hang our license with the national brokerage called PXP, so we have a lot of flexibility to do many things, but similar to Jason's group, we are an investor niche for this group. And I kind of tripped across that niche by accident. Like I said, I was an investor first. And going to these meetups 3-4 years ago, I noticed one very common thing: people that were buying residential 2 to 4 unit investment properties are just getting into investing, were doing all the work themselves and really just using an agent to set up showings, right? They were very frustrated. They're, I was like, well, there's an agent, can you introduce me to somebody? And there was no really common person they send me to. So I'm gonna get my license and I'm just gonna book my own showings and take pull by the horns, if you will, right? So that turned into, well, talking to people like, well, can you show me a property? I like what you're talking about. Let's do this. So it seemed very natural. My why kind of became, consulting, helping people, right? Not just a transactional, play the game, play the numbers, Zillow leads, that type of stuff, like people that need help in return. So a lot of it organic return business. And I feel like with investors, it's a very unique industry and niche because they come back to the board, right? You do it well, you're not really just tricking someone into a sale, like buy this house. It's not a subjective type thing. It's very objective, very focused. I'm a numbers guy. I like to use numbers to legitimize things and be logical. And logic is one of the best ways to do business, right? Because it just makes sense if it's logical. Previously, I was in sales in a logistics company, so I had been an investor for like 15 years myself. Like a lot of you and a lot of people in this room and maybe watching, I was an accidental house hacker, accidental investor. I didn't know what that was. Bigger pockets didn't really exist. 10 or 15 years ago, I just owned a condo when I got into school. I'd been to the dining room to a friend for $300 a month, curtain and the rooms in one of my other buddies, and there you go. That was the house hacking. No idea what I was doing. Figured, if I could rent this condo out, post move out for break even, I'm a genius. No idea what vacancy rates were or overhead expenses or how to deal with HOAs just yet. But you got to start somewhere, right? I think a lot of people will agree that the first one is usually the hardest. But backtracking slightly, my group services the city in the suburbs. I live in the southwest side of the city, southwest suburbs. Sorry, I just moved out right before COVID. Got a 3 and a 6-year-old, so they serve as my motivation and backbone to kind of keep going and growing. There.
Awesome. All right, yeah. So I think more of the story is, for me, I was kind of the same way, right? I got my real estate license just because, and actually like the education you go through is pretty good. Like I felt way better after I got my license to be a better investor. I don't think there's many downsides, maybe disclosing, but if you're afraid of disclosing, then there's probably a reason you're afraid of disclosing. I'm never afraid to do that. But yeah, I think it makes everything a lot easier. So if you're interested in getting your license, these two guys are definitely a place you want to look into if you want to be an investor. We talked kind of a little bit about alignment and vision. You guys are both business owners. What's kind of the vision for where you guys want your brokerage to go? Go with Jake first.
That's a great question. I would be lying if I told you I knew exactly where I wanted to go. Personally, we service a lot of buyers, so we want to be flexible, right? We want to hopefully be able to say yes to everyone that wants help. There are certain people who just can't help or would accept help. But for us, I think bigger and better is just a consistent goal, right? You want to do more with less, and I think that's across the industry. So for us personally, I want to trade the ground up so they can start with $100,000 rents in the south suburbs, but progress to 10+ unit deals in Bucktown for $5 million, right? So as many people probably know, it's not a flat rate industry. As an agent, you earn a percentage of the sale price, right? So the bigger the dollar sign, the bigger the price tag you make. So for our business, it's always asking how can we get our clients to succeed and get them onto bigger and better investments, right? So I know that's not a super objective goal, but it's a hierarchy thing for us to, let's have a niche, but let's also be keeping in mind that, we're doing this for a reason. It is to make money. And, more time you spend with family and friends means less time you have to work. So you spend 15 hours a day working. Some people can and some people will, but I like to, try to do more with less.
Yeah. So I get a ton of fulfillment and talking to first-time investors and just kind of sharing my experience, and then also talking to experienced investors as well. The biggest thing that I see for our business and where it's going is I'm recognizing that for one, we're trying to recruit more agents to be in the middle, because I feel like there's a lot of big brokerages that are out there that kind of get lost in the shuffle. You know, we got a lot of properties, for example, there's just so many agents that are the largest one in the city. Can't really find a way. And then, or if you go to a very investor focused one, there's like maybe there's nobody that's really selling. So we're trying to mix the two together and have a really cohesive collective group that's all thinking the same way. And so really from an agent perspective, we want to do deals with one another. Eventually, I mean, I imagine our business could be a syndication business, and we're going to be having our agents involved in a lot of our transactions, but also on the client side at the same time. I love we do traditional sales. So our bread and butter is still single family condos and two. So we're still residential, and that's what the bread and butter is. It's going to grow into the commercial side. But right now, that's where we're at. And I'm getting a ton of people that are just really more interested in house hacking and how to do it. And so I share my personal experience of when I was a house hacker and how I convinced my wife to be a house hacker with me, because that's challenging. And so I shared that experience, and I actually open up the P&L and show you the numbers of how I did it, so that you guys can know, like, hey, here's how Jason did it, here's how I can do it at the same time. And so believe it or not, if I have the right client, I'm not just helping them buy it, I'm actually offering to be a mentor to them and to potentially partner with them on the deal. So that's kind of what we're all about, is kind of looking for like-minded people that have great character. And you know, we're all going after the same financial freedom. How do we achieve that? How can we do it together? Because what I've really realized is that real estate is such a team sport, and the more people that you can get on your team going after the same goal, boy, you can really grow. And then it's all about our alignment, right? Having everybody that's really aligned, you can really get to a result much faster. Let's kind of see where our business is.
Sweet. So as investors, right? Everyone here is an investor. What should they be doing when they come to work with you? Right? I think a lot of people will come to you who don't even know what they should be doing as an investor. And sometimes I know that's frustrating for me. What would you tell everyone in the room who's wanting to be an investor and wanting to come work with someone who's focused on working with investors? Like, how can they be a better client for you?
Yeah, that's a great one. So here's what not to do.
Yeah, even better.
What Jonathan just said. Don't come to me and just say, hey, I'm an investor. Big deal. And like send it to me, right? I don't know what that means. Right? It's not a big deal to Jonathan. It's not a big deal. You know, me is a number. So you got to be really specific about what you want. So I would say, really, there's three things that you should bring to me when you are an investor. Okay, the first thing is, what's your strategy? Are you a house hacker? Are you a flipper? Are you a neighborhood guy? Are you just a long-term buy and hold investor? Right? Have that strategy, really focus, and we're sticking with that to start. Right? We're not going to go from one strategy to the other on the church. And then second is, what's the location you will do this at? A lot of times, you know, that's really important. And then third, what is your return requirement? So return requirement, if you can tell me those three things, that tells me you've done your homework and you know exactly what you're looking for in the deal. So for example, let's say you're a house hacker and you say, Jason, I'm currently living in a condo downtown, $100 a month. I'm looking for a 3-unit building where I can live in 1 unit, and my total expense for the monthly payment is less than $15 million. Right? Because I'm reducing my living expenses, and can you help me find a building with that? Absolutely, right? So that's very clear and specific. If you want to live there for less than $15 a month, we probably live there for less than $1,000. Right? So it's being very specific on that type of stuff. But if you're a flipper, right? So a flipper, if you know exactly what your spread is between what you're buying and selling at, you know, hey Jason, we do bungalows, and if you got a bungalow that you come across and you got a spread of 300,000, like send that over to me. Something to look at. Right? That's very specific, and that can definitely help. So let's see, last one. If you're adding your portfolio, you buy 3 or 4 units. What's the cash on cash return that you're looking for? Right? If it's that's one of the biggest numbers that I look at, or if there's just a cash flow per month. But if you can tell me that, hey, I'm looking for a cash on cash return of 5%, if I can get that annualized over the next 5 years, like that sounds like a good deal to me. Right? So those are very specific things. If you bring those types of things to the conversation to start with, you're gonna set yourself up for at least a very efficient search and a very good relationship.
Those are all great points. I would, to add to those, I would say during that first phone call, or lead up, don't be too worried or anxious to share with the, I'm not your financial consultant, but let's be clear and transparent about how much capital we have, right? To come forward on that goal, right? Like, yes, we can talk about ROI, but we don't have the $50,000 to put down on, a $100,000 placement. We need to talk about that now. We don't need to talk about that later, right? So, how much do you have now? How much will you have later? And that ties into ROI goals. And a lot of times we work backwards from financing. And part of that financing is how much cash do you have on hand right now? What kind of all that we're going for FHA, or we want for pure investment loan? Do we have to start to consider commercial options, or can we talk to someone like A&M that has some, private money lead programs, right? So that's a big thing up front. Let's be very transparent. You don't have to be nervous or hide those things. We're on the same team, right? Just because I know you have more than.
Hey, Dad, can you move the fridge?
Things that don't make sense for you, but let's be clear on that. Another thing is give objective and specific feedback, and Jason kind of harped on being specific, right? If you're shopping for a condo or a house and it's a regular residential purchase, right? Like, and you say, I'm gonna pass on that condo, okay, fine. It's a very subjective thing. It's your decision. You can not just be feeling like the vibes, whatever. Okay? But if it's an investment property and I send it to you and we talk about it and you just say, nah, pass. That's not really helping you much, right? Like, why? Why are we passing? You don't like the tax assessment's low. You're worried about the furnace being central gas, like gas. Like, what is the feedback there? So try to give whatever agent you're working with very specific feedback. Because if you're just saying, nah, pass, like on everything, I'll tell you why. They're going to move on. They have bigger and better things to do. At least the good agents do, right? So give specific feedback. On that same topic, if you're communicating, an agent should be doing this up front with you, but let's set a transparent, spot where we can look at the numbers together. Is it a shared Google sheet? Is it an email we're going to stick to? We can do a text chain, sure, but let's be consistent with it, because you're all over the place. You're really going to hurt that agent's productivity and efficiency unless there's not service your needs, right? So avoid the 10 p.m. text, and I tell us to my agents too, don't reply to these texts, or reply in a kind of an abrasive way. Like, if you send me a text at 10 p.m., there's just a red link that says, hey, what do you think about this one? What do you think about the taxes, the rent, or, back to that, objectivity. I think that if I put it in unit laundry into the third floor, then I can put it for 1,800. That's an answer I can give you, or that's an answer hopefully the agent on my team, or that's investor friendly, can reply to. If you're just looking for opinions all day long, that's not typically what we're there for. So I would say those are the big things I look for myself. But again, just be in general, right? You're going to see a lot more attention than you would if you were being someone that's just super picky about their next house, right? So,
yeah, I got one more thing. So Jake kind of talked about the numbers a bit and how they use the centralized location. That's great. And be very upfront about how your comfort level of underwriting a deal and what that means to you. If you're a first time investor and you're still breaking into it, like chances are maybe you haven't done enough homework, you haven't bounced off, what a true underwriting deal kind of looks like. So come to me with that, and we'll sit down for an hour and I'll walk you through the template and hey, this is how I look at things. And then you can decide on if that's the proper way you want to do it. We can be in the searching.
I love all that. Yeah, I know for me, for sure, transparency, as much as you can just be transparent of where you're at. If you're new, just be new, ask questions, don't be afraid to, and then just be ready to take action. Make data-driven decisions backed by talking with people who know what they're doing, and then be ready to act. I think, the most frustrating thing for me is when people aren't ready to take action and then they start sucking your time. All our time is valuable and it's equally valuable. So respect everyone's time, and when you're ready to take action, then, come to us and make some decisions fast. I think I'm just gonna go ahead and open it up to any other questions we have. Any kind of like things you want to know about Chicago, best places to buy, how you can be, a better client. What does anyone have for questions? Ready?
The big topic of the day is cap rates. I would love to know how you guys establish cap rates in certain neighborhoods. We have different ways of doing it, but I would love to hear your explanation on how, Logan Square versus Ashburn, how those cap rates are set, and how those are determined, what's being done.
Awesome. Yes. Question was just about cap rates, how you're setting them, determining them. Maybe Jason, I'll let you go first. You can just give a brief definition of what a cap rate is as well, just in case everyone doesn't know.
Yeah. So I will be honest, majority of our business is just cap rates. We don't. The people that talk about cap rates for a 2-4 unit, it's really irrelevant. Cap rates really come into play when 5+. So it's basically the capitalization rate is like your rate of return. So respects a lot of things what we're seeing in the city overall is like a 5.5 cap of what we're seeing. So it's like, but those would be different. So your lower cap rates will be for a nicer property in a nicer area, right? Your higher cap rates. So a lot of times the location will drive that cap rate which rates it. But it's all going to be comparable what's in that location and again what those sets are. So Jake probably.
Yeah, I would say, cap rates aren't directly correlated with cash on cash, right? They're a reflection of like unleveraged returns. When you bought cash, they kind of equate to your cash on cash returns. But I would say, and to your point, I wrote about like, where are they, what are they looking like? I kind of remind people that a 10 cap that's advertised on the south side of Chicago versus a 5 cap in Wicker Park. It doesn't mean necessarily that the south side property is long-term going to create more cash flow. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means that a higher cap is, for a lower cap, is a hedging risk, right? But cap rate, in my opinion, we have to look at like, it's not just about your rate of return. And actually, a lot of people get in recent years, you see the advertisements on LoopNet and Crexy and other commercial sites that are like 10 cap, 11 cap, really should be focused on what the cash on cash return is and what the expense ratio is and really what your bottom line dollar is, because it doesn't mean that a 5 cap is worse than a 10 cap, right? That's kind of irrelevant, right? It means that eventually, and I remind clients that those properties, if you're looking at a graph, if you will, those will intersect at some point and they'll be pretty much a wash, right? A higher cap rate is just a more risky property. It's just in an area where values are lower, and thus you might have higher expenditures, higher vacancy, things like that. So, it is a great way to compare apples to apples when you're looking at up to 4 units and mixed use properties as well, and anything that's coming across with commercial financing. So it's important to be aware of them. But like Jason said, like technically the sales comp approach is going to be used for anything for 2 to 4 units, anything mixed use or 5+. Banks and lenders and buyers and sellers start to look at cap rates for apples to apples comparisons. So unless you have any specific questions on the neighborhoods, like what cap rates would be in a certain neighborhood, I know them pretty well. I have a good opinion on them. But high level, that's how I look at how to find it.
Hey guys, so my question is, for when you've got clients who say they've got a couple properties under their belt, they're starting to get into DTI issues, they're maybe running out of capital or aren't able to refinance everything out of a value add project. How are you guys, from your experience, how have you seen your most successful clients be able to scale? How are they recycling capital or are they partnering? What is, you know, your repeat clients multiple times? How have you seen them be able to successfully do it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, how have your clients, which clients have scaled most successful and why and how did they do it?
You have to typically have money to make money, right? So it's hard to create equity out of thin air unless you add value, right? So I know that Alex has gone through a few value add projects themselves, and yeah, eventually equity, kind of starts to disappear, right? Like you can't recycle it for forever. I would say a huge strategy in the beginning is what I know a lot of people in this room and probably taken from this conversation I've done already is high leverage, right? Like try to house hack that first deal for 3.5% down. That might be obvious, but as far as the next deal goes, you can start to get into conventional methods, right? You can look into private money. If the deal is good enough, then getting a private, there are private equity companies out there and private lenders that will allow you to put 10% down or 5% even if it's not your primary residence, just the rates will be high, right? So if the deal is good enough, you can still find those. So I would say number one, don't be handcuffed by just conventional lending options. Ask your agents, ask other lenders, ask other investors what they use. My most successful clients have been able to put under 10% down on multifamilies have been, everyone can't do this, but have been some type of minimum, right? Or professional status, like where you can leverage that, they can keep recycling that. So if you know anybody or you're better yourself, definitely take advantage of those loan programs. The government makes it super easy to leverage 0% down, which is an easy tool. So I know it doesn't apply to everybody, but if it does, or you know somebody that you partner that has that ability, then that's huge.
I'm probably going to build off of just partnerships. That's the biggest thing. We're going to run out of money, but you can go out and network and you can go find people that they have a bunch of money and you have the knowledge, right? You've got the track record. So go talk to them, ask them about their goals and what they would do, and work out a way that you can do deals together. Joint ventures should be something that you really seriously consider about, because again, like doing it by yourself is really, really tough. You can recycle it, and I've had clients that have been successful with the preferred strategy. I've done it myself as well. Like Jake said, eventually it does evaporate as you put it into the properties. So joint ventures is a big thing. And here's what I'm doing right now is, so you can take out an FHA loan and you only have one remaining. Here's something that's very interesting that I'm trying to do. And I've already done it with one of my other brokers at home where he owner occupied a property with a joint venture. He was able to take advantage of 10% down and just put it that way. But now I'm working with clients that are looking to do FHA 5% down. The loan's going to be in their name. We're still going to partner the deal because he's looking for a mentor to do the opportunity. So as soon as he is going to fund, he'll have the loan in his name, but we're still going to be doing the deal together. So it's a great opportunity to, again, think about some ways that you can partner with people that have the same goal. And it all comes back to that alignment of, you're doing this together. You can offer one thing, you can offer the knowledge and the expertise, while the other person is bringing the counter.
I'm gonna have one more thing. So if you're just being limited by the fact that you might, some investors cap out that 10 residential mark for conventional loans, there are a lot of lenders now, they're not really well known, but you can get loans based on the debt service ratio or the DTI of a two-family property, even single family home. So the lender won't necessarily just look at your income. So if you're capped out on your personal income or debt to income ratio, you can find these lenders that if you show them pretty much what the rent is going to be or what the rent already is, will lend to you almost like a commercial lender on a 2-4 unit. They're just not conventional. So again, their terms may be higher than pay upfront, but they have things. So you want to like Google or ask us or ask other people about pretty much debt to service lenders.
Yeah, I can't echo partnerships enough. I think you can't be afraid to give up equity, right? I think the abundance mindset is what's really gonna explode your portfolio more than anything. I'd give up freaking anything, like the whole deal, to have someone who has a way bigger balance sheet than me to come sign on that loan. Because all that does is open up the door for you to go do way bigger deals. So I just say, think bigger, really, like get out of the 2 to 4 unit if you really want to do big things. And then find someone who has already done it and just go, be with them as much as you can and find a way to add value. That would be the fastest way by far to scale big, is find people already doing it and add value to them. There's some questions in the back.
Since you guys, but also obviously, space, you guys like to build people or do you value add? If you do value add, what are the challenges about maybe, supply chain issues, factors, and then what is the reason for your clients? They will, you like to totally pay, so get in trouble with those lately, with the new environmentals, let's think about what we're seeing.
Okay, yes, two-part question. First question, made personally and kind of what are clients doing from a condo perspective in 2 to 4 units? Are they buying things more turnkey ready, or are they adding value? And then the second question is regarding a 203K loan process. How's that going? And if there's any kind of issues with the construction, you guys had worked through it.
Yeah, so adding value, so one of the easiest things that I try to look for in the 2 to 4 unit space for adding value is that gardening. How can we get another unit out of that 2 flat that's there? And so typically a 2 flat is not really, but a 3 flat will potentially, it will, and then a 4 unit should, right? So that's kind of rule of thumb. So how do you look for an opportunity to add value down in that basement unit? And then also another easy value add is if you've got a lot of these 2 flats that have dining rooms, or a 3 flat that has a dining room unused, right, and still has really big living space, you can convert that dining room into a 3rd bedroom, and that will boost the rent. And on average, I mean, throughout the neighborhoods, you're like between $200 to $250 in a boost of the rent. But there's some neighborhoods, I'm going to draw this one, from most of them, has a very big spread between what 2 bed, 1 baths are versus a 3 bed, 1 baths. So if we really dive into it, I would be looking for opportunities there for value add.
A lot of people get caught up in the BRRRR process, right? If anyone's in a bigger pockets or knows this like method of buying, renting, refinancing, repeating. But again, it's similar to flipping, right? So I just remind clients that are kind of like, well, I'm your BRRRR. Are hoping for a full BRRRR, meaning that you're going to all your equity out, because that in a condo or a smaller building is hard to do. Again, you have to have money to make money there. So you have to almost have enough value to be able to put that property, right? So I just remind people of that. So the strategy of buying turnkey versus value add, I mean, if it's your first property, I really push people to focus on turnkey just to get the rhythm and get the reps in, because the worst thing you can do, in my opinion, one of the worst things you can do is really swing for the fences and then have that first attempt derail you from any of the results, right? Because then you're just then you're just doing your job, right? You might as well just hit that single and be like, well, yeah, I could have gotten part of it. Yeah, maybe you're not this giant success that we have, some podcasts, but like we've all heard before, really the ones you learn most about are the ones that are hard, but like if that first one was your hard one, it eats up all your capital. That's a tough thing. I know the second part of the question was about 2 or 3K. An awesome vehicle. I've done a few and been involved in them. More recently, I know it is challenging in an environment where contractors are not in demand. I can comment on just the expense of those contractors and the GCs that are willing to do 2 or 3K come with a premium, right? So you just have to keep that in mind. The supply chain is definitely a thing, you know, in Chicago, it's not as bad as some areas or states, you can get stuff done, you just have extra time. I don't know what that rule of thumb is right now. But when you're looking at 2 or 3K stuff, just make sure the work is worth it, right? And you're buying and you're targeting places where that seller really doesn't have any option. Because if you go to the process and the client comes to me, it's like, hey, I want to use the 2 or 3K over your place. I kind of already am a little anxious about that because that should just be a tool in your tool belt if you come across a place that is 2 or 3K potential. If you're just going after only 2 or 3K targets, you're gonna have a hard time, right? Because those sellers, usually it's after they've gone through a few other offers that have fallen through, they're willing to accept 2 or 3K. So I tell people that, you know, hopefully that's not true.
Yeah, just to comment on that as well. I mean, the 2 or 3K loan, it's, you know, you can't be throwing that out there on a property that just got listed. You know, that property needs to be out there, it's sitting on the market, and that's a true potential of the 2 or 3K loan. Because if I were a seller, I'm not gonna accept that because I know that the close time is gonna be 90 days at least. It's gonna be extended. And so there are just likely, you gotta be searching for properties that have been stale on the market, and that's what that's for.
Okay, very nice. Sorry, I'm just gonna add a little end perspective. Oh, you have a question too? Yeah. I think I went down. So I just wanted to say, you guys talked about the method a lot, and I've started talking to a lot of clients about that. One thing that I'm trying to push as many people as possible is to understand what the refi is going to look like when you come to refinance. Because cash out refinance rates on investment properties for cash outs are astronomical, and they can eat up all your return or you put you in the rent. So just talk to a lender before you go into the project, so you know when it's time to refinance. Because there are some really scary rates out there on that for cash out refis on investment properties. So just get to know that too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is still Mark Twain is the key to getting ahead is being started. You know, Jake was saying, get started and everything will get so much easier after your first deal or after your second deal. Every deal moving forward is always easier. And then 2 or 3K loan stuff, we do them, we love them at Quality Builders. So we're happy to take them on. I think a lot of contractors struggle with the paperwork. We excel in it because you know, we've been driven from working with a monster contractor. That's all we know. So we're very systematized in process to handle them. But like Jason said, they take longer. There's kind of a chicken and the egg thing with needing the estimate. The lender needs the estimate. We need plans. So expect for it to take some time. But I mean, I think if you can do it, it's going to be a way better deal than if you don't. So I'm always encouraging people to go after it. Just know it's a process that you have to follow and be ready to, you know, invest some time and some money.
So I have a question, and this is pertaining to flips. So is there a standard split amongst investors that you guys see when it comes to like whether I bring the capital or I bring the property or the experience? Is there like one more than the other one?
Yeah, so really good question. So if Elizabeth would bring you a deal, either one of you guys, to flip a property, what does that split look like? Is it equity based? Is it who's usually doing what, and how's that work?
Yeah, I mean, here's the great thing, it's up to whatever you work out with that individual, right? So it's what do you bring to the table? I'll give you an example of my personal opportunity that I've done. And so we split the deal together. And the thing was is that they were going to, I brought the experience. And the thing was they were going to manage the property, they were going to manage the tenants, they were going to the rents, they're going to do all that. And then I was offering advisory roles, but then also the capital at the same time. So it's really up to however you want to do it. And that's like the big thing about partnerships is, you know, some people have a lot of value and some people just don't. And like, you just got to figure out what is your space and where do you fit in. That's how I think everybody.
Yeah, I'll comment that in recent years, like, money is a little bit easier to come by, so the old 50-50 rule of like, hey, if I bring money to do the work, let's do a 50-50. I would say it's been favoring the party who has the deal or is willing to get their hands dirty and actually do the work. Not to say it doesn't apply to every deal, but I would comment that since interest rates have grown and are still historically kind of low, capital is not king, right? I don't really go around, and most people or investors that have some money sitting around, like they would love to split a deal 50-50 when somebody brings them something that's awesome on market. Again, I'm speaking from my experience. So a lot of times the deals that I've been involved in on the side and as an investor are a little more straightforward and just do debt, right? Like 6 to 12 month balloon and you get 10 to 12%. And then, they owe it to you. It's more of a straight note situation. It's less of a partnership, but those are options as well. So it's, it can change. But typically in the recent market, and I would say that the person who has the deal and has that good labor and they hopefully cost-effective labor probably should be asking for a 50% agent.
Yeah, we're at 50% typically, and I think it's generous. So
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm always one to partner with anyone and everyone if you bring the deal. But yeah, we've done 50-50, and I honestly think we're being generous by doing that. But I have an abundance mindset, and so if you bring me a slamming deal, like we'll make it happen. Any last questions? Oh, one more from Jeff.
Hey, do you guys know what's going on with ADUs? Will it ever expand that zone, or is it still going on in programs? It's been hard to get involved by. You can do an ADU outside of the zone if you have permission sometimes. I don't know how it exactly works, but I'm just curious to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the question was about ADUs. Are they expanding the zones? ADU, for anyone who doesn't know, is an accessory dwelling unit. Basically, you're able to add a legal unit to one of your buildings, which is actually a great way to add value. So if you're looking for ways to add value, look into those areas that are already zoned for ADUs, because that's an easy way to buy a 2-unit and make it a 3 and make it a legal 3 much easier than it would otherwise. So I don't know if you guys have any specific knowledge about the ADU ordinance or what's coming. I know everything in Chicago takes a long time. I can tell you that for sure. What do you have?
The only thing I know is in terms of them expanding, I think that's in sights, but I don't think it's anytime like soon. Like I feel like this is still a 5-year stretch when that pilot program is expanded. So what they currently have, I don't see it happening. I just know that overall Chicago, they eventually want to get there, but we see how this pilot goes.
Yeah, specifically, I know the pilot program is still in effect, so it's doable in those areas, and there's a few zones. I do know that a lot of people hope that it makes their garden unit just magically legal. And I would just caution that because you still have to comply with code and open yourself up to inspections as a result. So that is usually not like the tool that's not really what's meant for. Technically, at the moment, I would encourage people to be very cautious with that, because once you invite the city in, the floodgates could open. I've had some people successfully take a few steps on adding coach houses or units above garages. It's actually going to get a little less headwinds. So I'm not saying it's impossible to add an attic unit or a legal garden, but hopefully that garden's not like already existing. It's just kind of like has the 7-foot ceilings and a couple egresses, and you might be able to try to make it work if it's a raw space, because they're very open to inspecting raw space, not going to be rip anything out. But if you already have a tenant down there and you just want to make it legal 2 or 3, I would tread lightly. But if you potentially have a garage in a long lot and you can build up, I think it's something that it's just a little easier to use.
Yeah, I think there hasn't been nearly as many ADUs as I think the city thought there was going to be, mainly because they're way more expensive than I think everyone thought they were going to be, especially for like coach houses. Anytime you're adding a coach house, you have to get water back there, which people forget about. You have to get electricity back there, which people forget about, and those costs are the ones that really break the bank. And yeah, I think even with the garden unit ADUs, like are way more expensive than you think they were. It's not, you know, a quick $30,000 or $40,000 thing. And like Jake said, like the second you invite the city in, like everything's coming up to code. For good reason, right? They're doing their job and you want to provide the best house in the end, but I think there's just a lot less ADUs happening than the city thought there would be. So I think, yeah, a 5-year horizon sounds like a good number. I'm gonna go ahead and kind of just wrap it up there. What's the best way people can get a hold of you guys?
Yeah, you can send me an email, jwagner@greystonerealty.com. You can call me too, 847-997-1639, or I'm on Instagram, Jason Wagner for real estate. So you can find me.
We created a landing page so it's easy to remember, chicagohousehackers.com. It's not our website, but it's a landing page. You can get on our deal list, or reach out to me or anyone on our team. Or you can go to www.theaxongroup.com, which is our team page. And we would be happy to help anyone, even if it's just on a high level consultative conversation. So thanks again.
All right, thank you guys, and thank you everyone who's here.